What's going on, guys? Zuko back with another Shadowlands video. How are y'all doing? I hope you're doing well. Listen, I'm doing good. I just got off work, so I'm a little zonked. Brain's a little fried. But I'm here and I'm ready to do this. I got my coffee and I'm ready to go. I hope you got your coffee too, because we are talking today about Ele Shaman, baby. That's right. I'm going to do sort of the double legendary video for all the elemental builds right now. And I've kind of touched on this in videos in the past, but I want to talk about it now because we're so close to double legendaries. They're literally right around the corner. 1, 2, 3, like 4 days away, right? Is the 22nd for me. That's when we're going to get access to double legendaries after, of course, you do Chapter 7 of the campaign. I'll talk about that in a second, but we're going to talk about Ele Shaman and the video, the builds that are possible, the different combinations based on the different builds. Like, what is the best covenant to take with whichever Ele build you're doing? That's what we're going for, okay? And we're going to talk about Skybreakers, Echoes, Deeply Rooted, and Windspeakers. Those are the 4 main builds I'm going to talk about. Which covenant legendary should you take with each of those, with each one of those builds? I can't even talk. That's what we're going to do, okay? And I'm going to give you guys my suggestions on what I think you should take. Little TLDR at the opening of this video. I think Elemental Shaman is going to absolutely explode in Mythic Plus once double legendaries get online. There's a couple of builds here that are just being held back by the fact that you don't have that Covenant legendary kicking in. And it mostly has to do with Venthyr, and we'll obviously get to that. But if you want to just get a little TLDR, I think that Elemental Shaman will be in an amazing place in the when Tuesday rolls around and we get access to double legendaries in Mythic Plus in particular. They're going to absolutely slap in AoE damage. They're still struggling a little bit on single target, but the tier set will hopefully shore up some of that weakness. So that's the video we're going to get. Grab a coffee. Let me get my notes up. Let me take a sip here. Let me start off by saying that excuse me. Let's talk about double legendary acquisition very quickly. On March 22nd, we are getting double legendaries. For EU, it's like the 23rd. What do you have to do? Well, you have to do Chapter 7 of the campaign. It's the last chapter. It's not open yet. That's why it's gray. Chapter 7 of the Secrets of the First One's campaign. If you haven't done any of the campaign, get your butt to Zereth Mortis and start doing the campaign. You need to do it. The other thing that we'll touch on really quickly, let me jump over here, is that this is the page on Wowhead. If you want to go to Wowhead and look at this, it just talks about how on the 22nd, once you do Chapter 7 of the campaign, you get access to the Belt of Unity, which is... What is that? Good Lord, get away from me. You get access to the Belt of Unity, which is item locked at 265, okay? But that's for free. You just have to do the campaign, and you get a belt. And the Belt of Unity comes with whatever covenant you're a part of. It comes with that legendary effect. So if you're... Kyrian, it gives you the Kyrian legendary effect. If you're Venthyr, it gives you that you can just switch covenants and the belt will switch for you. Okay, very, very cool. Now, also unlocking on the 22nd is the Memory of Unity. We had a lot of talk about this. The Memory of Unity just simply says if you want to craft that covenant legendary on any piece of gear, not just your belt, you can do it with the Memory of Unity, but you have to be revered with the Enlighten, which, as we've talked about in the comments, is actually very achievable right now for probably most people. If you're doing any content in Zereth Mortis, it's pretty achievable. So get into Zereth Mortis, get your dailies done, get the weekly done, kill the world boss, do all that stuff, get the rep grind finished, and you should be able to get the Memory of Unity. Now, you'll have to also purchase a 291 base piece, and those are unfortunately like prohibitively expensive right now. There's no Longboy to show you in town here, but those are kind of crazy expensive right now, so I wouldn't recommend necessarily. You don't need to get the 291. You can just start with the Belt of Unity and then move up to the Memory of Unity later when you have enough money, or if you don't have all the rep right now, just get the rep later. It's not a big deal, okay? That's it. Let's move forward, and I want to talk really quickly about my notes over here. I want to quickly talk about this Storm Elemental nerf that came in a few weeks ago for about a week ago, maybe even longer. When was this? This was 13 days ago. So 2 weeks ago, Ele Shaman got a pretty substantial nerf to Storm Elemental. And I think it's just a sign of the times that have come for Ele Shaman, that we are shifting away from Storm Ele and we are shifting into Fire Ele. And I'm going to explain some of the other pieces to that, but this is the first like major piece right here, is that this nerf came in. So it's active now, and here's what it says. Storm Elemental's Wind Gust effect gained from casting Lightning Bolt or Chain Lightning now has a maximum stack of 10. It used to be 20. So for context, let's flip back here for a second. Storm Ellie, it's a 3% cast speed reduction. So that caps out at 30% now instead of 60%. So when you're casting Lightning Bolt and Chain Lightning, they get quicker and quicker and quicker. Now you can only get them 30% quicker at max instead of 60% quicker. So literally it's cut it in half, which is a substantial nerf to Storm Ellie. Let's keep reading. Additionally, if you cast Storm Ellie again while having Storm Ellie active, the Wind Gust buff effect is reset. Oh, this is like the absolute nail in the coffin. So what we were discovering on the PTR like a month ago or maybe like 3 weeks ago was that you could have a permanent Storm Ellie. Basically, if you went Skybreakers plus I think Venthyr, it allowed you to get a bunch of flame shocks out, and those flame shocks would crit, and the crits would reduce the cooldown of Storm Ellie. Let me show you Skybreakers really, really quickly here. So this is, of course, Skybreakers. So flame shock crits reduce the cooldown of Fire Elemental, or if you're talented into it, let me move over here. I think it changes the wording. Let me look at it again. There it is. Flame shock damage over time crits reduce the cooldown of Storm Elemental by 1 second. And Flame Shock gets 50% more crit. Now, this Elemental Conduit, this is the Venthyr legendary effect. It, of course, spreads 5 Flame Shocks to anybody hit by Chain Harvest. So you could get, like, you'd start a pull and you'd summon your Storm Ellie, and then you would cast Chain Harvest, and you would get 5 Flame Shocks out for free. They would all be critting. They'd have a very high chance to crit, and they would all be reducing the cooldown of your Storm Elemental, and that led to some pretty insane scenarios where you were getting permanent Storm Elemental. So they have now nerfed that as well. Okay, the nerf is substantial. Even if you can get permanent Storm Ellie, what Blizzard is saying is that it doesn't matter. We're resetting the stacks that you have gained. So if you got 10 stacks and you recast Storm Ellie, hoping that it will be permanent, it'll reset your stacks to 0 and you got to start again. So it's an absolute, like, blowout. This is really bad for Storm Elemental. Okay? Like, it's just insane. It's such a big nerf. It's not even funny. So what does that mean for Storm Ellie moving forward? I honestly can say with confidence that when double legendaries get here now, Storm Ellie is kind of dead. And I'm happy about that. And I know some people are not happy about that. I know some of you guys are like just not happy about that at all. And I understand where the unhappiness is coming from. I really do. But I think it's time to just like take a break on Storm Ellie, guys. We've had Storm Ellie for like 6 years in a row. Nobody's even looked at Fire Ellie. And now I think the time has finally come for Fire Ellie to like be a thing. And there's good reasons for that, and we're going to get into it right now. So let's start our conversation here with Skybreakers. What is the best Covenant legendary to pair with Skybreakers? I'm going to say unequivocally it's going to be Venthyr, Elemental Conduit from Venthyr. Why? Well, let's get into it. I'll try and speed run through each of them and why I think, because this is going to take forever otherwise. But here's what happens with Venthyr. You cast Fire Elemental, then you cast Chain Harvest, and it sends out 5 Flame Shocks, as we talked about a minute ago. Those Flame Shocks, because of Skybreakers, now all have 50% crit, and they're reducing the cooldown of Fire Elemental, which actually doesn't matter. That's not the reason why this is good. They have 50% crit. Let's read Elemental Conduit. Flame Shock critical strikes reduce the cooldown of Chain Harvest by 1 second. Oh. Okay, well there's the synergy, there's the combination. 5 Flame Shocks, you can have 6 out. So you do Fire Elemental into Chain Harvest. You have 5 Flame Shocks out. You add a 6th Flame Shock to whichever mob doesn't have one. Then you just go crazy with your regular damage. You do Stormkeeper, Chain Harvest, or Chain Lightning into Earthquakes, and you're getting an Earthquake buff now because of Master of the Elements. Your Earthquakes are all 20% stronger, by the way, because we're not taking Storm Ellie. I mean, you can go Liquid Magma. I think Liquid Magma is fine, but let's pretend you're doing Master Elements. Your Earthquakes are huge. You're doing big, you know, Stormkeeper, Lightning Bolts. You're still doing all the normal things. In the background, while this is happening, all those Flame Shocks that are out there now are ticking. They're critting 50% of the time. It's basically all the time. Pretend like they're critting basically all the time. Your Chain Harvest cooldown just goes brrrr. It just goes down really, really fast. I did this in a video previously, and you guys can go watch that if you want to, but that's the synergy that's there. It makes your Chain Harvest go from like a 1.5 minute cooldown to a 25-second cooldown or a 20-second cooldown, depending on how many Flame Shocks you have out. I'm dead serious. That's how low it is. So you'll be Chain Harvesting on every single pack in Mythic Plus. You'll be adding flat Flame Shock damage on every single pack in Mythic Plus. All those Flame Shocks will have 50% more crit. And the icing on the cake is that look what Fire Elemental does. While your Fire Elemental is active, Flame Shocks deal 25%. They deal their damage 25% faster, and they last twice as long. They don't last for 18 seconds. They last for 36 seconds, guys. 36-second Flame Shocks. That obviously loses a little bit of value in some of the lower Mythic Plus because you're going to blow up those mobs. But in the higher Mythic Plus, when the mobs on Fortified Week, when the mobs have like so much extra health, those Flame Shocks will probably last almost, you know, 70% of their duration or something. You're going to get so much value. There's suddenly value in Fire Nova. You get to spread so many Flame Shocks so quickly, and your Fire Elemental is just buffing all of those Flame Shocks, making them last longer, making them tick faster, and then Skybreakers is making all of it crit, and all of those crits are reducing the cooldown of Chain Harvest. Do you see why this is so good? It's so good for Ele Shaman. It's a brand new build. I guarantee this will be the best build in Mythic Plus. I think it'll be the best one. I think it's going to beat Echoes of the Great Sundering. Genuinely. I think it's nuts in Mythic Plus. So that's kind of what you're going to be doing. That's the absolute standout for the first Skybreakers. What else can you run with Skybreakers? Okay, we have Skybreakers. Our Flame Shocks are critting. What if you don't want to go Venthyr? Well, I think you could genuinely get away with going Necro. And because you're going to basically cast one Flame Shock by itself, and then you can cast an additional one with Primordial Wave, and then you can get a third Flame Shock out there. It's only a 6-second cooldown, right? You could also play around with Surge of Power, but you probably want to go Prime Elemental, so let's be real. You could play around with Surge of Power legitimately, but I think it's a little too janky. Let's just pretend like you do one Flame Shock into a Primordial Wave, into another Flame Shock, and you might get a Primordial Wave reset if you're running the Conduit. So what you could do is you Primordial Wave, you Flame Shock, Primordial Wave, Flame Shock, and then you cast that Lava Burst. The Lava Burst will cleave. It'll hit 3 targets. It'll give you 30% more haste. And on Ele Shaman, haste is so incredibly good because you just keep casting Chain Lightning over and over and over again. So, like, you can funnel some of the Flame Shock stuff into a haste buff that now makes you go giga fast. And that's really, really cool. It does, and then if you get a reset on Prime Wave, you can just do it again. So you have 12 seconds of 30% haste. You add a 4th Flame Shock, maybe a 5th Flame Shock because you've had time to spread them around, right? Now you press your Lava Burst again. Your Lava Burst will cleave to all those targets, and you get 50% haste this time instead of 30. So, like, there is something there. There is definitely something there. I don't think it's as good as the Venthyr one, but I think there's something really cool there with the Necrolord build. Okay, the third one I would say is the Night. You could go Night Fae with Skybreakers, and you'll get tons of cooldown reduction on your Storm Ele or Fire Ele. So this is like this is going to be, I think, the new Storm Elemental build. Okay, I genuinely think that if you still want to take Storm Elemental, even though it's nerfed to the ground, you go Skybreakers, and then you take Night Fae. And you're spreading Flame Shocks as normally as you can. You try to get as many of them out there as you can just by yourself. Those Flame Shock crits are going to tick the cooldown of your Elemental, your Storm Elemental down. And then your Fey Transfusion will also take 36 seconds off of the cooldown of Storm Ele. So what I think will happen is you could probably get Storm Ele down to realistically a 30 to 40 second cooldown instead of 2.5 minutes. And then basically you can use the Storm Elemental on every pack. Maybe every other pack. I haven't totally done this test. I did it a while ago, but I don't remember the exact results. But I think ideally you could have this down to like 40-second cooldown, which means maybe every other pack you're pressing Storm Elemental. Between the Seeds of Rampant Growth cooldown reduction and the Skybreakers Flame Shock cooldown reduction, I think you could genuinely get a good cooldown going on this guy. So that's maybe the way to carry Storm Elemental forward. It's not having a permanent Storm Elemental because that's been nerfed to the ground, but you could have a Storm Elemental on every single pack, and that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool, right? When you combine it with the conduits, the one that increases the duration of Storm Elemental by like a massive amount, right? The Call to Flame, Fire Ellie or Storm Ellie lasts 44% longer. So that's what you're looking for. I think that's maybe the only thing left for Storm Elemental is to do a Skybreakers plus Night Fae kind of build. So those are all the Skybreaker ones. I'm not going to mention Kyrian because it's just not something that's really viable on the DPS classes for like Enhance or Ellie. I will talk about it for Resto Shaman later in this video, but not right now. Let's move forward. Let's move forward to the most popular build for Elemental Shaman right now, which is Echoes of the Great Sundering. That coffee went down the wrong windpipe there. What are you going to take for your Covenant Legendary? What are you going to pair it up when you have Echoes of the Great Sundering? Which Covenant is best with Echoes of the Great Sundering? I think ideally it's going to be Night Fae. That's probably the best one because of the crit that you're getting. So you get 24% crit. Just all crit, everything critting for 15 seconds. That's kind of insane. That means that, like, whatever pull you're doing this on, you're going to summon, like, Storm Elemental, get him going crazy. Then you pop, make sure you pop Storm Ellie first so you get the cooldown reduction. Then you're going to, like, have some banked up Maelstrom, hit that Earth Shock, bank up some Maelstrom, summon your Storm Ellie, do Fey Transfusion, press the Giga Earthquake that's super juiced from Echoes of the Great Sundering, and then it'll be critting. And then you can hopefully get like a trigger on Aftershock and get 2 super juiced Echoes of the Great Sundering Earthquakes inside of the crit window from Seeds of Rampant Growth, and that's going to be so much damage. It's going to be so much damage. It's uncapped AoE, right? Earthquake, physical damage to all enemies. It's just anything within 8 yards of the target. So, like, imagine if your tank pulls 20 guys together and you get 2 Echoes of the Great Sundering Earthquakes inside this crit window. It's just going to blast. It's going to be so ridiculous. So, I think that that's a great combo. If you still have Echoes of the Great Sundering as an Ele Shaman, Night Fae, once you get the Night Fae buff, man, that's going to be so much damage. I mean, it's just good in general. There's also the Haste Soulbind from, it's the middle Soulbind Dreamweaver on Night Fae. She's got those little haste flowers that you stand under, and I think that'll be very, very good for Echoes as well. I think if if you don't want to do that, if you really want to go Necrolord, you can get a bunch of haste, which is also fine. It's nowhere near as good, I don't think, as the Night Fae combination, but I do think that there's something here with Splintered Elements that you can spread, you know, a Flame Shock into a Primordial Wave into another Flame Shock, of course, and then you basically would channel your Fey Transfusion. Oh, sorry, not this. I'm Splintered Elements. I'm crazy. You would do, obviously, Flame Shock into the Primordial Wave into the Flame Shock, and then you're going to cast that Lava Burst, and then you get a bunch of haste. You get 30% haste, maybe more if you get a Primordial Wave reset. You get all the Lava Burst cleaving, but then you just get a huge haste window, 30% haste for like 12 seconds, maybe 40% haste for 12 seconds, and you can just chain those big chain lightnings into the group. Super fast, giga fast chain lightnings, building up Maelstrom really quickly, which gets you back to your Earthshock into Earthquake, Earthshock into Earthquake. It just gets you to your spenders really fast because you're casting chain lightning so often. So that would be kind of like the ideal idea there, is you use that haste window to get your Echoes of the Great Sundering off more quickly. So that's probably the second best one I would say for Echoes of the Great Sundering. And then Venthyr I think is always just going to be good. There's no direct synergy here at all. It's just passive damage from the Flame Shocks, and you get Chain Harvest cooldown happening. Now, you don't have the Skybreakers crit, making the Chain Harvest go faster, but your Chain Harvest would still be like a 35-second, maybe 40-second cooldown instead of a minute and a half. So Venthyr is always going to be valuable for Ele Shaman. Always. Just always. Okay, that's Echoes of the Great Sundering. Let's move on to the third build. We've done Skybreakers, we've done Echoes. I want to talk about Deeply Rooted Elements, because I do think that Deeply Rooted Elements for an Ele Shaman is, like, finally viable. I really believe with double legendaries, with Deeply Rooted, you're going to want to go Venthyr. That's just, like, the obvious choice here. Because you get 5 free Flame Shocks, right? So if you get a proc on Deeply Rooted after you've cast Chain Harvest, it'll hit all those new people that have Flame Shocks on them. So, like, you press Fire Ele, and then you do Chain Harvest, and all your Flame Shocks are out for twice as long, and they're all ticking, and they're giving you Lava Surge procs. And then you just press Lava Burst as much as humanly possible. You just keep pressing this button over and over and over again. Keep pressing it, because you're going to get procs on Lava Surge. And then one of those procs is going to trigger Ascendance with Deeply Rooted. So it's a very weird way to play the game. You don't press Chain Lightning nearly as much as the other builds. You need to press Lava Burst, because one of those Lava Bursts will trigger an Ascendance proc for you, and then that Ascendance proc will just lob meatballs at all the enemies that have Flame Shocks on them, and it'll be the best thing ever. It'll just be so good. It's really satisfying to get this combo to work. I tried this early in the PTR a couple months ago, and it worked very, very well. I was doing like 15, 16, 17k sustained AoE damage over the course of like an entire Halls of Atonement run. I'm telling you, it was nuts. It was absolutely nuts. So obviously it's RNG based, but the more you can press Lava Burst, the more chances you have at this triggering. And because Venthyr puts those 5 Flame Shocks out, you get Lava Surge every second. Like, literally every 2 seconds, you're getting another Lava Surge proc, so you keep pressing it, and your chance of getting the proc is extremely high. That would be the absolute best combination, in my opinion, is to go Venthyr if you're going to take Deeply Rooted Elements. The second best one, I think, would be Splintered, would be Necrolord, once again, because you're getting the extra Lava Bursts from Primordial Wave. So if you get you go Flame Shock into Primordial Wave, into another Flame Shock, then you press your Lava Burst, it's going to trigger extra Lava Bursts at all the targets that have Flame Shocks on them, and those extra Lava Bursts can trigger Deeply Rooted Elements to go off. So there's a combo there where you might get, it's not as many meatballs as the Venthyr one, because it puts out all those extra Flame Shocks for you, but you can get this buff going, and on top of the extra meatballs from the Primordial Wave potentially triggering Ascendance, you get a haste buff, a huge haste buff, right? So you're going to get the 30-40% more haste maybe, which means, once again, you could cast more Lava Bursts more quickly. Instead of this being a 1.5 second cast time, it goes down to like a 0.8 second cast time with haste, right? I think if we press Lust right now, we'll see that 1.5 second cast. There we go. I just pressed Lust, and it went down by 0.4 seconds, right? It went 1.5 second cast to a 1.1 second cast. I mean, Lust is only 30% haste. This is it. This is literally the Primordial Wave buff that you can give yourself. Flame Shock into Prime Wave into Flame Shock, and you press Lava Burst, and you have literally a heroism for yourself. A mini heroism. It's not even a mini one. It's a full heroism for 12 seconds. If you get a reset on Primordial Wave, you can do it again for another heroism buff. That's only 3 Flame Shocks. Imagine if you were able to spread even more of them, right? So the point here is that the cast time of Lava Burst will go way down, and you can fit in more of them and trigger Deeply Rooted Elements more often. Okay, that's that idea. That's about it, I think. I think that Night Fae is kind of whatever. You'll get some crit, and if your Ascendance procs, a little unknown fact about Ascendance is that when you're in Ascendance form, your Lava Burst, the damage on Lava Burst gets increased by an amount equal to your critical strike chance. So if you spread your Flame Shocks around and you get Lava Burst and you get a proc on Deeply Rooted Elements, you can channel your Fey Transfusion. You should probably channel it before that. But let's say you channel it before and then you get a proc. Then you have 24% more critical strike chance. That equals 24% more Lava Burst damage, which, again, lining those two things up is probably impossible and really unrealistic. So that's why Night Fae doesn't even really work, in my opinion. And Kyrian, I'm not even going to talk about because it's really difficult to execute. Okay, last one. Windspeaker's Lava Resurgence. This is the single target build. When you cast Earth Shock, gain Lava Surge and increase the damage of your next Lava Burst by 20%. I think the real winner with Windspeakers, if you're an Ele Shaman who's primarily doing raid and you need a single target build, you're going to go to Windspeakers. What do you pair with Windspeakers in a raid? I think, obviously, Necrolord is looking really, really good just because of the haste. Yes, maybe you only have 1 or 2 targets in the raid. There's lots of raid bot, like Prototype Pantheon has 4, so you can get even more. But let's say, you know, you can get realistically speaking, you can get 1 to 2 targets consistently for your Primordial Wave. That's 10 to 20% more haste. That's really, really good for your Lava Burst. You can cast more of them. You can fit in other spells. You can build Maelstrom really quickly. You can build Maelstrom up to get back to the Earth Shock, so that when you cast your Earth Shock, you get that Lava Surge once again. And of course, I didn't realize how this worked at first until I tried it out, but it's really, really cool. You can basically use both charges of your Lava Burst. You want to use up all your Lava Burst charges as much as possible, because once you trigger Earth Shock, it'll give you a Lava Surge proc. It gives you like a full charge of Lava Burst. So it's like you can go Lava Burst into Earth Shock into Lava Burst right away, which is really, really cool. So there's some neat combos you can do with that. And like the haste from Necrolord is just a straight buff that's always going to be solid for you. And hopefully you can cleave the Lava Burst a little bit if possible. But in a pure single target scenario, 10% haste is actually just fine. The next one I think would be, if you're going to take this into Mythic Plus, let's say it's a Tyrannical week, and I guess maybe you want to try Windspeakers for the bosses, you can obviously run Venthyr, and that will add a bunch of Flame Shocks for you, which will also be giving you Lava Surge procs. But more importantly, you'll be able to generate more Maelstrom from the Lava Burst that you were throwing out. Like, you get a Lava Surge proc from all your Flame Shocks here. You send out the Lava Burst, Lava Burst, Lava Burst. Then you get a Lava Surge proc, or you get enough Maelstrom to cast Earth Shock, and then you go Lava Burst, Earth Shock, Lava Burst. You can do the combo once again. So there's something there, but it's just not super good. I think the haste is going to be a lot better for you as a Necrolord with Windspeakers. But really, I think Windspeakers is going to get online once we get the tier set bonus, which is, again, all about Lava Burst once again. But our single target damage is just not that great in general, and it's better probably to just double down on the AoE potential of Skybreakers, Echoes, or Deeply Rooted. So those are all the Elemental Shaman builds. I'm going to say really quickly for a Resto Shaman guide, because we never really get to talk about Resto Shaman, and I know some of you guys have to like off-spec into Resto, and you may be wondering what build you want to run. I had a couple questions about it the other day, so there's 2 builds for Resto Shaman I want to talk about really quick. Number 1 is Skybreakers plus Venthyr, same as the LE one. It's literally all damage. The regular Restoration Shaman legendaries for healing are all like terrible. They're just bad. They're just bad. There's like 3 of them here, and they're all... Primal Tidal Core is like okay, but it's literally just an extra Riptide. This, nobody uses Chain Heal right now, so maybe once you get your tier set bonus, this might come back, but it's just not that great. Deeply Rooted is actually okay. Your Riptides have a chance to activate Ascendance, which does a big burst of healing, but it's random, and you don't really want that when you're healing. So they're all kind of bad for healing. So instead, you're just going to go for damage. And in Mythic Plus, Skybreakers plus Venthyr is insane damage for Resto Shaman. And on top of that, the cooldown reduction that your Flame Shocks are giving you on Chain Harvest is really important. Really, really massive, because Chain Harvest becomes literally your best on-demand heal. It'll full heal your entire group almost all the times that you press it. And it'll put a Riptide on all of them, giving you more passive healing. And you can dump all the Chain Harvest healing and that Riptide healing into a Cloudburst Totem. Right? I'll just show you. You can put it all into a Cloudburst Totem and then explode that Cloudburst Totem for even more healing, which is kind of cool. So in a raid scenario, that would be really, really good. Cloudburst, of course, consumes, like, it pulls in a certain amount of all the healing that you're doing and then expels it later. So you can do the upfront Chain Harvest healing and the Riptide healing, pushing it all into Cloudburst and exploding the Cloudburst for a whole bunch of healing. So, like, I think that the crits... First of all, the crits from Skybreakers and the Chain Harvest will give you lots of extra damage as a Resto Shaman, but also the cooldown reduction on Chain Harvest as a healing button is insane. It's really strong. It's really, really strong. So that is, I think, the best option for Resto Shaman. And then the other most obvious option is going to be Deeptremor Stone, where your Earth Ellie gets an Earthquake, plus the Kyrian Vesper Totem Legendary. This, of course, is where the Kyrian Totem shines on Resto Shaman, because you can activate both sides of the Raging Vesper Vortex. You can consume 6 charges of it, but you have to use 3 damage spells and then 3 healing spells. Or a healing spell and a damage spell, and then a healing spell and a damage spell. You have to use 3 of each to detonate it twice. You can't detonate the Raging Vesper Vortex twice by just using DPS buttons or just using healing buttons. That's why I'm saying it's so bad for the DPS guys, because they don't want to spam, you know, Healing Surge on themselves or Earth Shield to get this thing to proc. But Resto Shaman is always combining Flame Shocks and Riptides and healing and damage spells, so it's easy to do both. So you can get value on the Kyrian legendary that way. So I think that if you pull a pack of 15 or 20 guys in a Mythic Plus, and you drop your Earth Ele with Deeptremor Stone, and you drop Vesper Totem, and you trigger all of the extra damage from this, I guarantee you that you'll be doing like 15 to 20k damage as a Resto Shaman. The burst from this combination is absolutely disgusting. It's crazy how good this is. So this is, I think Kyrian will be really good for Mythic Plus Resto Shamans. I think Venthyr is also amazing for them as well. So it's really a choice between the two. But that's it, guys. That's my video. I know it was super long. I tried to squeeze them in as quickly as I could, but I just want to make sure that you guys have a good understanding of why my reasoning for all this, right? So I think the clear winner for Ele Shaman moving forward is going to be Skybreakers plus Venthyr. I think that's going to be really fun. Tons and tons of extra damage. I think Echoes is in a really, really good place with Night Fae. I think that Deeply Rooted Elements is in a really good place with Venthyr as well. And I think that Windspeakers is probably in a good place with Necrolord, but it's not really looking super good for Windspeakers until you get the tier set bonus. For Resto Shaman, of course, we're talking Deeptremor Stone plus Kyrian, or you can go Skybreakers plus Venthyr, just like the Elemental Shamans will be doing, I think, in my opinion. So those are the different combinations for the double legendaries for Elemental Shaman and for Resto Shaman. And I think that moving into 9.2, Elemental Shaman will be back. I don't think it really went anywhere, but the AoE potential coming out of Elemental Shaman will be off the charts. It's going to be crazy how much damage they're going to pump out in Mythic Plus, so stay tuned for that. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you so much for liking and subscribing. If you have not subscribed to the channel yet, I would really appreciate it. We're really pushing to get more and more subs, so I would really appreciate it if you did that. Thank you guys so much for liking. If you like the video, drop a like down below. It really helps me out a lot once again. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.